friendship forged in music, a partnership in its fourth decade, a lifetime in pursuit of the perfect song, and a community built along the way. The band is Skydiggers, episode 15, Josh. And now, in conversation with Jane Gowan of the Music Buddy podcast, and me, Joel, Josh Finlayson. All right, let's press play.
He's pressed it already.
All right, we're going to start with a roll call.
We're going to do a roll call.
Because this season we're going to have more than just the two of you. So we figured we'll just start out by everybody saying their name and what they do. Jane, you should start.
I'm Jane Gowan. I'm hosting and editing this, and it's a pleasure to be here. Hello, Joel.
Yes, my name is Joel Stewart.
Hello,
I'm a
Josh.
failed filmmaker. I'm glad to be here as well because it has catering. And you are?
And I am Josh Finlayson, Skydiggers. I didn't know what else to say. Ex-dishwasher.
Yeah, the best job there is out there.
And janitor, actually.
Custodial engineer is how we're dealing with that these days.
Well, great to see you.
Great to be here.
This is season 3. Welcome to season 3, everybody.
Yeah. Like everything else, we're trying new things. So they're letting me talk now, Josh, which is good.
Yeah, it's
That's
nice
awesome.
to have you here, Joel.
Thank you.
Because in the previous seasons, I've had to turn up your jokes and comments in the background that were pretty worthy. So it's nice to get you on a microphone.
Full disclosure, I've usually been lying on my side while the podcast has been recorded. So this is way more energy for me to be sitting upright.
Okay, well, just let us know if you need a break.
Yeah.
So, Josh, this season we're talking about Skydiggers community, and we're going to be interviewing people that have known the band for a long time and that you've been collaborating with for a long time and been friends with. So, given that you and Andy have this 35-year-long, maybe longer relationship, I wanted to start by asking about him and your relationship with him a little bit and then kind of move out from there.
Okay.
So, from my understanding, Andy was friends with your brother.
My brother Neil, I have 2 older brothers. My brother Neil and Andy are the same age. And they met in grade school. And they were both goalies. They both played goal in House League and I think maybe even on a MTHL team.
Huh.
So I would have met Andy. I was probably 5, 6 years old.
Wow.
Seriously.
Yeah. And our folks were friends. Like they lived in the same neighborhood and they were, they had both had a large circle of friends. They do stuff together. They went on a few trips together and certainly did social things together.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, I've known Andy probably since I was 5.
Wow.
As my older brother's friend. So when I went into high school, I was in grade 9. My brother Neil and Andy were in grade 13. So I was in 1 year, I was in high school with them. And then they both went off to university. And I was playing in a band my last year in high school. That band moved to London, England.
With you in it.
With me in it, yeah.
They didn't abandon you.
Yeah. Context is important.
We weren't so good at conflict resolution. So instead of kicking you out of the band, we just moved to England. No, they took you with them.
That band started in April. Our first gig was like April of 1982, and it was at Larry's Hideaway. And I think that Andy was playing in Directive 17. I think they may have played with us that night. We maybe did a show with them down in Hamilton, which is where Andy was going to school at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And then I moved to England with the band for, it was 2.5 years or so, in the fall of 82. And then when I moved back, Andy he had more or less just left Directive 17. And one of the reasons any number of reasons that band just kind of ended. I can talk about it, but it was a great experience and there were lots of great experiences, but it just felt like it was time to come home. And I had a friend who knew someone who was building a recording studio, or had a recording studio. In those days, he had I think it was a 1/2-inch 16-track Fostex machine.
Wow.
And this is 1984 fall. So that was that was a very unusual thing to have at the time. Wayne Stokes was his name. Wayne, I had met him, but he was working at the Music Shop too, which is a music store on Yonge Street near Lawrence. And a mutual friend, Jamie Maxwell, who I had known most of my life, had said, this guy Wayne is putting a studio together. And I thought, well, that sounds cool. I'd like to meet him. And that kind of coincided with coming back to Toronto, and I met Wayne, and we ended up renting a house together in Toronto around Bathurst and Glencairn, just north of Eglinton. And we smoked a lot of marijuana and hydroponic marijuana that his coworker was selling. And we kind of managed to build a recording studio in the basement of this house, and we started doing some recording. And then that's when I kind of reconnected with Andy again, and he started coming over and smoking a lot.
Well, he heard you had weed, I guess.
The good stuff.
They have the good stuff, yeah.
And we started writing songs, the three of us. Wayne had great ambitions to start the studio. He wanted to start a record label, and he had a very clear vision of something. It was kind of like Network out west. Terry McBride, was that the guy?
Terry McBride. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was looking to get some investment and do things. It was all a great idea, but it was like, I wanted to play in a band and make music and write songs. It was very ambitious, that in a way that, the idea appealed to me, but it didn't really fly, like probably because we were smoking so much pot, possibly. Yeah. But regardless, we kind of got to a point where Andy and I just thought, we just want to go out and start playing these songs. And so that's what we did. And we started playing just as a duo. So this would have been 85, 86, I think. And then we started playing with Andrew Cash. He was doing this, he called it the Acoustic Meltdown. It was at the Spadina Hotel in the beverage room, which was the downstairs room. It was maybe 50, 75 seat room. And it was Monday night. Andy was singing with Andrew at the time. And we would get up and do a few songs during the night. And so would Jason Collette was playing a group called Lazy Grace. And anyway, Andrew went off to make his first record for Island. And we ended up sort of taking over the night. And P. Cash used to do the door on those nights. It was like a $5 cover or whatever it was. And one night he handed one of us a cassette tapes of songs that he had written. And we were, I think Andy in particular, because he had known Pete, through Andrew for a while. I don't think he'd ever really talked to him. And he had given this tape and we listened to it. And I thought, this sounds cool. And we invited him to come join us, and we started playing with him. And then decided to add a bass player, which we answered an ad in Now magazine. Oh. That was Ron Macy,
nice,
or AKA Ronnie Von Johnny, as he was dubbed. I think
the Vancouver millionaire. He's
the West Coast millionaire. That was his mother. Ronnie grew up in North Van, and he used to tell the story of how he lived in the basement of the house, and he would get up 2:30 in the afternoon and stroll up in his house coat and sit down and get his mother to make him an egg. And she said, "Oh, here comes the West Coast millionaire."
Well, you have to be a millionaire to live on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Were you still calling yourselves West Montrose at this point, or had you switched up to the Skydiggers or Skydiggers?
You know what? That's a good question. The West Montrose record came out in 1987, the single. The 45 that ran at 33 and a third. So I guess it was sort of around the same time, because the name Skydiggers came from Andrew Cash. He had made his first record, and he was looking for a name, and he liked that name, but he decided to go, I think it was Andrew Cash and the Ambassadors was the name of his band, but we all like Skydiggers. And so, in between him going off to make his first record, we met Ron and started jamming with him. And then it just sort of became, Wayne was a drummer. He played lots of stuff, but he was a drummer. And I was living with him, and it became, like he became the next piece of the puzzle. Was sort of and at that point, we had sort of created a bit of an identity for the band, and he joined in, and Wayne was always very enthusiastic, and he had a great energy.
I mean, you see the clips of Wayne playing,
Yeah.
and he's so like a little bit of energy.
Yeah.
Thank goodness you were smoking all that pot. Imagine if,
Bring him down.
yeah. I mean, it's like Animal from the Muppet Show back there.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he played so loud as well. And we were like, we really started because we started rehearsing in Andy's apartment. Andy and his girlfriend at the time, Tammy Presnell, were living on Bathurst Street, just north of Bloor. And we would rehearse in their living room. And part of the whole, the idea when we started playing was that, we had both been playing in bands, and, you couldn't sort of play unless the whole band played. You couldn't play a song. You couldn't. When I started playing guitar, when I was about 13 or 14, 15, I loved Doc Watson. I loved Chet. I loved all these sort of folky country artists, and would sing a lot of songs like that. But I was asked to play the band I moved to England with. The Ramblers was the name of the band. I was asked to play bass in that band because it was just drums, bass, and guitar, and a percussionist singer. But the guitar player, Andrew Kennedy, sang most of the songs, and he wrote most of the songs at the beginning. And they were good songs. Like he had a great ear, but really had this idea he wanted it like a trio, like bass, drums, and guitar. And so, yeah, I'm not sure why he asked me to play. He knew I played guitar, but he did, and I was. I thought, sure, I'll play bass. How hard can it be?
So you hadn't.
There's only
played,
4 of these strings.
Yeah.
You hadn't played bass much before that.
No, never. But for me, again, it was a good experience because I had played in bands. I played guitar in a few bands, always with guys that were older than me. Like, again, because I was the youngest of 3, there was always some connection that I was playing. But when I came back, I was playing guitar again. And so Andy and I were going out and doing like open mics and, playing with Andrew. And we wanted it to be something that we could take anywhere with us and play anywhere, anytime with a guitar and 2 vocals.
I've been walking around this old town, trying to find some peace, but the only peace I get is from hearing your voice. We don't talk no more, so I've had restless nights you wouldn't believe. The days are just as hard. Well, the only peace I get is from hearing your voice. We don't talk no more, so I've had restless nights you wouldn't believe. The days are just as hard. Well, the only peace I get is from hearing your voice. We don't talk no more.
Did you know you had chemistry with him even back then? Like, was there musical chemistry or was it personal chemistry? Did one evolve into the other, or?
Well, I think just that there was such a shared history was part of the chemistry. And certainly musically, there was a lot of common ground musically. I mean, groups like the Beatles and the Byrds were obvious common ground. I mean, Andy obviously loves to sing. We both love melody. So I think it was sort of a combination of the shared history and that we'd known each other for so long and, grew up in the same neighborhood.
Did you feel vocal chemistry? Like, because, people always talk about the Skydiggers harmonies, right?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I wasn't like singing was not necessarily my, I would sing, but it was not, I didn't have the same affinity or confidence with singing that I did with the playing. And it often couldn't always, like, especially the finger picking stuff, I couldn't always, like the syncopation of singing and doing and playing was sort of but I would sing harmony and I'm not really a natural harmony singer. Like if I get a part, it will stay with me. But I'm not one of those people that can have someone sing me a harmony and we'd be there, for 3.5 days until they fucking killed me because I still didn't have the harmony.
But listening back to some of the acoustic versions we did of the songs in season 1 and 2 of the podcast that you recorded here, some of your harmonies are not, they're not very standard. Some of them are pretty interesting. So you've just committed those to memory, I guess. Now it's muscle memory.
Yeah, for sure that, like just repetition, rote, they just kind of get burned in there somehow.
Yeah.
But then also sometimes there's songs maybe that I've written that I would sing them differently than Andy would. And so I would have a naturally different, if not melody, because I can sing lower than him. And that was the other thing, was that because my voice was probably more of a baritone than he is, and it's harder to sing harmony with a lower voice. But if you have a part, then it's no big deal. He is more, I'd say more of a natural harmony singer. Although what's interesting is that now looking back on it, and when Pete joined the band, that sort of broadened the vocal palette. And Wayne was also like a choir boy, and Wayne had a great voice that he was a great blender.
It's like a choir boy, except for all that pot.
Yeah. We often sang in unison.
Right.
There was at least 2 voices in unison always, but 2 different voices in unison sounds, it can sound cool because they're not totally in, because there's a chorusing to that sound. And
yeah, definitely.
And often Andy and Pete would sing, and it would be octaves, they wouldn't necessarily be, Andy might sing an octave higher than Pete. So it sounds harmonious, but it's not necessarily harmony. And then there would be spots where there would be harmony. And, Andy, when he would write a song or we'd record a song, he would have a harmony idea for one of his songs or one of Pete's songs. And he would be, he'd really sort of work on that, whether in his head or whatever, and then really execute that harmony. And whereas Wayne was, naturally he could sing thirds or fifths or whatever. That was very much, and he had a bit of a higher voice and a real clear sound to his voice, and it was a great voice for blending in that mix as well.
Being in a band, you grew up with 2 brothers. Do you think, as a band member, and now you've got this longevity, you've been able to stick it out, keep your band together, do you think it helped that you came from like a larger family and that we're able to you knew how to sort of fit into your spot?
Well, it's probably a question for my brothers. Both my brothers were my eldest brother, Matt, was a classical guitar player, and he has become a teacher and still plays. My brother Neil, who was Andy's age, was a piano player, and he probably amongst the 3 of us was the best, most musical, I think. And he was playing, so he stopped playing piano, I think in grade 8 or grade 9, and it was because his teacher was sort of making him do all this theory and all this stuff that wasn't any fun. But he played at a very high level. It was, I would watch him practice or hear him practice and think, it was all classical stuff. So I was just like sort of, that made a big impression on me, as did my older brother who played classical guitar, because the discipline of that type of music, just practice is, again, sort of by rote. You just have to do it. And they both worked hard at it. And it was a great example to me of what you needed to do. And I couldn't really read music. I have some self-diagnosed form of dyslexia.
No.
And dyslexia for those that aren't dyslexic. And I just found I took piano lessons for a couple of years, and the piano teacher would play something and she'd play it again and I would memorize it, and she would be, having me look at the music, but I had already memorized it. So I had I don't have the greatest ear, but I had a good enough ear to avoid reading music, which I found really challenging for some reason. So watching my brothers play, they read music, I said, I can't do that. So I have to figure out another way of doing it. And my dad had a really eclectic and very cool record collection. You know, they're mostly popular records of the time, and we had, amongst other things, we had these Chet Atkins records at home, and I just thought, wow, like I want to play guitar like that. You know, it's like a magic trick. You know, like how could he make a guitar sound like that? And it was way beyond my abilities, but I ended up having a couple of guitar teachers, and the second one was a guy I'm still friends with, Marty Posen, and he had the patience to say, okay, I'll show you how to do this. And I remember I would tape my guitar lessons on cassette, and he would, you know, play like the Elizabeth Cotton tune, Freight Train, something like that, which is a syncopated guitar picking tune. But he would play it at like a quarter speed, so I could sort of hear what was going on. And I'd go home and I'd listen to it, and I would come back and I'd be playing something entirely different because it was too slow, first of all.
You reinterpreted it?
Yeah. And he said, you know, he would say, that's awesome, keep doing that, but learn what I'm trying to teach you, learn what you came to learn, which I did. And it was very unconscious at the time, but it gave me this discipline to learn what I was asking him to teach me, but he also was encouraging me to sort of venture out and do these things that were very just my own interpretation of that, of what I heard so it really kind of opened my mind to the idea of creating music on my own without it was very, again, sort of unconscious. In the end, I think it was a real gift that he gave me that way.
And do you think that tendency of yours to sort of reinterpret it showed your young songwriting capabilities?
I think so, yeah. And, you know, we would often, you know, we joke about it all the time. Like, you know, we would reinterpret songs. I know there's songs that I'm just going by memory. Or I'll give you an example. Early on, I had like some sort of riff on the guitar, and Andy started singing Tom Dooley, you know, the old folk tune, Tom Dooley, and it was totally a different melody and progression, but he sang the melody over this, which somewhere I think it's on a recorded version of what we did, and that was a great example of reinterpreting an old song. So that was always something that we liked to do, and in my mind, that's what the tradition of folk music has always been, you know, like, because it was an oral tradition. It was passed down through generations, and it's like broken telephone, you know, like inevitably someone who's dyslexic like I am is going to hear that in a different way and play it in a different way, and then it becomes your own song, or it becomes your own interpretation of that song, or it becomes a gateway into writing a new song.
And you guys have covered a lot of great songs together, like chosen a lot of really good cover tunes to do, like you did on this most recent album, the Debris song,
yeah,
the Ronnie Lane song,
yeah,
Slow Burning Fire,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A song that people have always thought was our song. But
Yeah.
we were just talking about this with Paul Langlois and Greg Ball yesterday. I mean, they both thought it was our song as well. But you know, early on in any band's sort of career or life, you know, in the early stages, there are often songs that help sort of define whatever your sound is. So certainly that song with the vocals and the two acoustic guitars and the it had that sort of high-ish energy that really my guitar and Wayne's drums were like the rhythm section of the band early on. Ron played very melodically, and it wasn't really until after Wayne left the band that we kind of became. Ron played more in a traditional way as a bass player, locking in with the drummer and the kick drum and stuff like that. But Slow Burning Fire was a song that Pete had heard. It just came along, and it sort of fit in with some of the other material that we're doing, and it was just a song that kind of helped shape the way we sound and vocally and musically.
But you're right. I mean, that's what the Beatles did, right? They did cover songs to find their
I know
voice.
bands do.
and
All bands do. You know,
do.
that's how you create your own. You know, and all artists do that. You know, you copy other people until eventually you kind of create what may be your own sound as well.
My shoulder still burns where you touched me last night. You hugged me and walked out the door. We've been pretending that we're only friends, but tonight we can feel something more. Just being around you is making me warm. One touch and I know that I'll melt in your arms. There's no way to stop this burning desire, 'cause there's nothing as hot as a slow burning fire. And you look in my eye just a little too long before I can look away. And lately I've caught you staring at me with a new kind of look on your face. Just being around you is making me warm. One touch and I know that I'll melt in your arms. There's no way to stop this burning desire, 'cause there's nothing as hot as a slow burning fire. Yeah.
Slow Burning Fire was written by Jan Buckingham and Vicky Smith and was originally recorded in 1984 by George Jones with Terry Gibbs. The song was later re-released in 1987 by Tammy Wynette. The definitive Skydiggers version appears on the 1992 album, Restless.
Just being around you is making me warm. One touch and I know that I'll melt in your arms. There's no way to stop this burning desire, 'cause there's nothing as hot as a slow burning fire. 'Cause there's nothing as hot as a slow burning fire.
I'm always intrigued by a person growing up in the big city who develops this fascination with the Nashville mystique, right? Which is so culturally different from Toronto, you know? I mean, it drew you there later in life, of course, but is it because that's what your folks were listening to at the house?
For sure. I remember, you know, vinyl, looking at those Chet Atkins records, and on the back seeing pictures of Chet Atkins playing his country gentleman guitar, which I eventually bought one, you know, because I was like, you know, that was the guitar I coveted to play and have. Yeah, and pictures of, you know, him in Nashville or at the RCA studios in Nashville. And, you know, the other thing for us was we also listened, like, you know, we had a station wagon. It had an 8-track player in it, and we had the very best of Gordon Lightfoot, amongst other tapes. And that was another, like, Gordon Lightfoot was Ian and Sylvia. Those were recordings and things that we had. And they were also, of course, it was all kind of Canadiana, which was not, it wasn't that at the time, but these were artists that, you know, Lightfoot singing about stuff that you, as we're driving around the country, going to visit family all over. You're driving through these landscapes that are all very much what he's singing about and what he's talking about and what you're identifying with. And Red Shea played guitar with Lightfoot. So it was a trio usually, and those things. It was a bass player, 2 guitars. I don't think he had drums till later on, but the original sort of first few records was a trio. And Red Shea's guitar playing, to this day, I think he's just, I don't want to say he's underrated, but I would say he's kind of been underappreciated. The way he embellished Lightfoot's material along with the bass playing, I just think those records they still stand out. They're so timeless to me. And Red Shea, eventually, he didn't like touring. He left the touring band. He still made records with Lightfoot for a while, but Red taught Travis good guitar.
Oh, really?
And that was when I met Travis,
Nice.
Travis from the Sadies. But at the time, like 89, 90, around the time our first record came out, he was playing with his dad and uncle in the Good Brothers, and we played a festival together, and I met him, and we sort of, made a bit of a connection, and then a few years later, played again. He was now playing with the Sadies, just leaving the Good Brothers. And then we kind of connected, and we started hanging out a lot more, and I was so taken with the fact that Red Shea was his guitar teacher, and he's such a great player, and anyway, that was, for me, that was also a very cool connection.
Tell me, baby, why you've been gone so long? You've been gone so long now. You tell me, baby, why you've been gone so long.
From their first meeting in the 90s, Travis and Josh remain friends and collaborators to this very day.
Tell me, baby, why you've been gone so long. Tell me, baby, why you've been gone so long. Tell me, baby, why you've been gone so long.
When you have the full band Skydiggers in the modern day, you have Aaron Como on guitar sometimes, and I guess you'd consider him maybe a lead guitar player in a lot of
For
ways.
sure, yeah.
And then you're
Amongst other instruments, he plays everything.
kind of holding down the rhythm, and you're counting the songs in, and you're doing that. But do you before Aaron came along, or before there was a lead guitar player, quote unquote, were you trying to find a balance between being rhythm and lead?
Really what happened was, because we started, I always sort of say we were almost like a vocal group because it was 4 voices and acoustic instruments. But as we started playing bigger rooms, it was harder to project that acoustic music. Like by the time we were playing rooms like the Horseshoe, it had evolved to a point where me playing electric guitar made more sense. It kind of gave more dynamic to the sound. And so I was happy to do that and play. My role was sort of changing, and I was sort of providing maybe a bit more harmonic texture to the sound. And sonically, I played electric on the first record, but by the time the second record came out, I was playing a lot more electric. The next few records, I probably hardly played acoustic guitar at all. And by the time we did Road Radio, which was the last record that Pete Cash played on, I think I hardly played any acoustic. And then the next record, Desmond's Hip City, again, it was sort of a combination of probably mostly electric, but maybe a few acoustic tunes. And then now it's really more that the band it's a big band. There's lots of instrumental players. And, one of the things that I've found with playing electric guitar is that, like, sonically, I like a certain way guitar sounds, so I tended to be loud on stage, and it just raised the volume on stage. So the acoustic guitar meant that things weren't as loud, and that made singing easier as well. And also, we're playing mostly rooms that are more listening rooms now, I'd say, overall, so less volume is probably better. I'm not against playing electric, and I've certainly played it on the last record, and part of me kind of misses it because it's fun to be loud and but at the same time, I mean, the band is just so great, and I love being part of the rhythm section. You know, the bass and drums, and holding that down. You know, that's a great place to be.
On the next Employee of the Myth, Josh Part 2, the story of Josh and Gord. Employee of the Myth is recorded at Blue Rodeo's Woodshed Studios in Toronto, Ontario. The podcast is engineered by Tim Vesley and edited and mixed by Jane Gowan. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate, review, share, subscribe, and play it loud. For more information about what you just heard, check the show notes. For more information about Skydiggers, visit skydiggers.com. My name is Joel Stewart. Thanks for listening.
Don't look to me for the answer. I don't know nothing anymore. I'll do my best in the meantime and wonder what it's been for. Je t'aime toujours, mon amour. Je t'aime toujours, mon amour.
I guess I'm going first.
You're going first. Yeah.
Andy's upstairs.
You know that, and we're going to ask you both the same questions and see what the answers are. Like that Newlywed Game clip of what is the oddest
Don't
place
tell
you've
Andy.
ever had the urge to make love. Remember that? And then the woman says, "Oh, I don't know, up the." And Bob Eubank says, "I mean location." It's a real thing that happened.